where is this happening and how? So there's three areas I'm going to touch on. There's the areas within social media, there's personas within shopping, and then into customer data, how to understand your user base, and then how to appeal to them as businesses going forward. So with social, this is where we talk, it's not just AI personas, but it's more AI influencers or virtual influencers is what often is talked about. Now, this isn't, in fairness, this isn't entirely new. Virtual influencers, at least as a concept, has been around for about 10 years. Little Michaela on the left, she's probably the original, arguably the most famous. She has about 3 million followers. She made last year $10 million from brand sponsorships alone. I mean, I say she doesn't exist, but her team made $10 million working with some of the biggest brands, particularly fashion brands and luxury brands in the world. Aitana's then on the right. She's newer, she's Spanish. She only charges about 10,000 euros per Instagram post if you want to work with her. She's open for bookings, I've been told. Also, the fidelity and the creative is getting so good now. A lot of people can't always tell the difference. The teams are very clear, everything's labeled. It doesn't mean that there aren't mistakes. One of the most famous being a very prominent current La Liga footballer, I won't say the name, slid into Aitana's DMs to ask her out on a date. And then her management team had to sort of break the news that, sorry, she can't meet you, she doesn't have a body, she's not real. So superstars are sort of falling in love with AI models and not even realizing it. So that's the first part. That's the first stage of AI influencers. The next is the reverse. So this is where people, real influencers, are starting to AIify themselves. So this is Karen Marjorie. She's real. She's one of the first examples of a human influencer AIifying themselves. So she took a custom GPT, trained it on all of her content. She's very big on Snap. She trained it on about 200 hours of her content. So the GPT knew how she talks, what she talks about, what her skills and interests are, the cadence of her voice, the language she uses. And then for a very nominal fee, her followers could pay to talk to AI Karen whenever they want about anything that they want. And there's an infinite number of Karens. Now, conservatively, Karen Marjorie was making about $300,000 a month from her AI personas. So real Karen's at home, she's having a cup of tea, she's relaxing, and her AI selves are making her $3.5 million. Now, this was a test. It ran for a few months. Karen shut it down for a few reasons, not least of which because of the technical challenges. Influencers don't want to suddenly run their own tech stacks. They're not coders. They don't want to build AI from the ground up. So this is where we need simpler systems to do it, which is where the social platforms come in. And we're seeing this already. There's been big announcements from TikTok and Meta in particular. So Meta has their AI studio. TikTok has Symphony. They are releasing features to allow all of us, but particularly influencers, to AIify themselves, to create new content in interesting ways, and therefore to monetize their fan base and to keep them on platform for longer. Free was showing earlier as well the capabilities in terms of language and lip sync, which means you can now talk to anyone. Influencers aren't contained from the language that they speak to. Everybody and every brand essentially has a global audience because you can re-engineer and rewrite what's being spoken about. So influencers suddenly, the reach and growth they have, the opportunities, is huge. And social media platforms love it because it means there's more engaging content, people stay for longer. It's a reciprocal circle of produce more, engage more, stay for longer. So that's what's happening, and then we're already starting to see brands enter into this space, at least to experiment and play around. So this is Layla Kadra. She's 23. She's from Morocco. She loves playing football. She's a very good amateur footballer. She DJs on the weekend. She studies medicine at university. She's not real. She is a synthetic sponsor. She's an ambassador for Puma in Northern African region. So she's essentially the voice of the brands, where she comes and she talks to the fan base about what's happening in the local community, different events, the lines of products that they're producing. She also interacts with real influencers and events that are happening. So there's this blurring of the digital and physical worlds. Now, already there's debate around things like this. Some people think it's very strange and odd. The other side is you could say, well, this is a brand mascot. You know, Disney and McDonald's and KFC have had mascots. People dress up as a mascot for decades, if not almost a century. This is just a digitized version of it. So a lot of the familiarity or not with AI personas comes down to the way that we frame them. And is it just a natural progression of what we've always done in marketing, or is it something very, very new? And sometimes actually trying to make it seem too new and too different is an issue, and actually making it feel more familiar is the best course of action for brands. So that's one example. The other ones is where we're starting to see a growth within employee-generated content, so ECG, which is becoming really, really big. So it's your employees being the face of the content that's being produced. Now, on the left is Currys. They're very big. They're an electronics retailer in the UK. They have become very famous in the last year. They've cracked TikTok. Every video that they produce goes viral. They're massive. They're very fun to watch. They use real employees. All of their people are human, and they're great. And the creativity of their staff is just unbelievable. But there are a lot of reasons why brands wouldn't want their people to front that content. There's brand safety issues. There might be challenges about where and how it happens. To be frank as well, a lot of employees don't want to do this. They just want to come to work, do their job, get paid, go home. They don't want to suddenly become the face of the brand. And then you get into the challenges of when they leave, who owns the content? Does it go with the employees? Does it stay with the brands? So you can understand actually creating your own persona sort of makes sense, which is exactly what Qatar Airways have done. So that's Sama, and she is essentially the digital representation of the entire global staff, all the cabin crew from around the world. But rather than it sitting on one person's shoulders, being responsible to talk about Qatar Airways, Sama does that on everybody's behalf. And she talks about the cabin crew, she talks about the experiences on flights, the wonderful destinations. And Qatar Airways can have the safety of knowing what's being said, what they're doing. Sama's not going to go out on a weekend to get drunk and do something that is worrying for the brand. It's all very perfect and easy. So there are different ways that brands are experimenting with this and then that people are engaging. We're also seeing a lot happening within fashion in particular. So H&M has started to do this. They call them digital twins. They're working on a program right now with 30 of their models to effectively digitize their being. So in order to be able to better and more quickly react to social trends and new content, more lines, more items of clothing that are being produced to create more content for their social media, but also for on-site. Now, they're doing it in what they feel is a very responsible way. So H&M doesn't own the digital twins, the models do. They're helping the models essentially AI-ify themselves, and then H&M pays a usage fee. And in that regard, it's really not that different to how traditional modeling works. Models make the majority of their income from the sale of their usage, from using the photos that have been taken, not the actual time on set having photos taken in the first place. So it's not really any difference. It's just the digitization of those usage rights. By the way, can anyone tell one of these is real, one's not real? Who thinks that one is real? Who thinks that one's real? I've got to remember myself. This is real. Whoever said this side, well done. This is the digital twin of Matilda, but it's very difficult to tell. I mean, it just looks like two different shots. And there's lots of these, and they're being produced. And this is the fidelity right now. It will never be this bad again. It will only get better. And finally, just in these areas, we're seeing this. Hugo Boss is really pushing into this area. They made some very big announcements recently as well about their use of digital clones, digital twins. It's slightly less about influencer personalities. Not every one of these people will have names, but what they see is a huge opportunity to populate their websites and their commerce platforms with more engaging content. And we see this from endless studies. The more video content, the more likely people are to shop. And the more interactive a commerce platform is, the more likely they are to make sales. So using AI content to fill that, so you're not constantly churning out substandard content in a physical way, kind of makes sense. And as a result, it's sort of seeing the role that AI personas have from brand building on social media and how it starts to come through towards sale and actually driving ROI off the back of it. So that's the first part. That's social. I mean, in terms of outtakes and how to get started, Research is really key in terms of perceptions for your audience base. Some audiences, particularly Gen Z, as you might imagine, really getting behind this, at least to experiments. They see brands who are doing it as very innovative. Not every segment is going to feel the same. So it's not a question of, you should do this, it's happening right now. It's a case of, look at your audience, assess how interesting or not and how relevant this would be for them, and then you can make the right strategic call. Is this something you should get involved in before your competitors, or is it something to wait because your category, it's not a priority yet? Secondly is auditing. Audit the AI influencers. If you work within the influencer space already, this is essentially an extension of that. Perhaps your current influencer team can do this. Perhaps it's a separate team. But you should be looking within this space because it's only going to grow. And in future, you might say, we want to work with an influencer. It doesn't matter if they're real or not. Or we want to work with an influencer and we actually prefer their digital clone versus their physical form for certain reasons. And then finally, tests and demos. You can start to play around with this. I mean, you can follow. Does anyone follow any of these personas already? Yes, no, okay. It's worth starting to demo to a couple of people. It's worth following it and seeing what's happening, how it grows. You can start to run demos. And like I said, Meta Studios, TikTok, Symphony, you don't have to publish it, but you can start creating and betaing your own versions just to get a sense of what it is and how it operates. So that's